Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video we're going to learn how to play Atoll, a new game designed by Jan Štěpánek, published by Albi. It's a game for 2 to 4 players. It also has a solo mode, and the recommended age is 12 and up. And you can finish the game in 60 to 90 minutes depending on the number of players in the game. So let's get started. To set the game up, separate these cards by their type. These blue are animal cards. These are fishes, small fish, medium fish and large fish cards. These are non-fish cards. They're called other animals. And these are corals. This is the deck of coral cards, and these are basic corals. Set these basic corals aside for the moment, then shuffle the deck of coral cards, place the deck face down on the table and draw the first 6 cards face up. Then set aside the large fish cards and then randomly draw 3 cards from the small fish deck, 1 card from the medium fish deck and 2 cards from the other animals deck. Shuffle these cards together and place them face down next to these coral cards. Then take all the remaining small fish, medium fish and other animal cards, shuffle them together and place it face down on the table to the display. Then shuffle the deck of large fish cards separately and draw 2 cards face up, and then take this round overview board and place it nearby. And finally, if you play the advanced version, shuffle the deck of vent cards and place it face down next to the display. Then give each player one of these random basic coral cards. You can return the unused card or cards back to the box. Place that basic coral card face up in your play area and place 1 pollution token on it. And each player also takes 5 coins, 3 plankton tokens and 1 fish scale token, then 1 hunt token, and randomly choose the starting player who will get this first player token. Finally, place the corresponding resources into these bonus columns on the round overview board based on the number of players in the game. For each player, fill in each row. In a 3 and a 4 player game, fill in the entire area. Place the indicated number of coin tokens and fish scale tokens in each space. I'm setting up a 3-player game, so the entire area will be filled with resources. In a 2-player game, for example, you would only place resources into these first 2 rows. Then take another fish scale token, place it on this round 1 space to indicate the current round, and with that the setup is complete. In Atoll, players take on a role of marine reserve managers, taking care of your atoll, growing your corals, increasing the population of the animals in that coral, and also dealing with some negative effects like pollution or food shortages. The more you develop your atoll, the more victory points you score, and then the player with the most points is the winner. The game is played over 4 rounds, and each round has 2 phases, the action phase and the recovery phase. Everything important is going to happen in the action phase. Players will buy these corals, animals, they will place them in their atolls and develop those atolls. And then in the recovery phase, players will gain resources, remove some fatigue tokens from their cards, and prepare for the next round. The game ends at the end of the 4th round. Players will score victory points from their corals, from their animals, based on the abundance levels of those animals. Some of these coral cards have endgame scoring conditions, and some animal cards also have the endgame scoring conditions, and then the player with the most points is the winner. Now I'm going to cover both the action phase and the recovery phase in more detail, and we will start with the action phase. During the action phase, players take turns, starting with the first player and then continuing in a clockwise direction. And on your turn, you have to choose one of these 5 main actions and perform that main action. And before or after that, you can also use support actions. However, these support actions can only be taken once per round, once per entire action phase. So after you choose and perform one of those actions, it's the next player's turn. Again, when the turn comes back to you, you choose one of those 5 actions again, and you continue like this until you don't want to or you cannot perform any of these main actions, and then you pass. When you pass, you take the resources from the current round, and then you can no longer perform actions in this action phase, and when all players pass, the current action phase is over. Now I'm going to explain all these main actions and also the support actions. The first main action is the coral purchase. With this action, you can purchase one of these cards in the display, and only one. You have to pay the price indicated in the top left-hand corner. That price is always 2 coins, so you have to pay these coins from your personal reserve back to the common supply. And then place your new coral in such a way that it touches one of your previously placed corals diagonally. They must touch diagonally, you can never place these cards side by side. After that, fill in the display, move all the cards away from the deck, and then place a new card from the top of the deck to the empty space next to the deck. When you place the new coral card and that card has some immediate effect, perform that effect immediately. Here, for example, you can remove pollution tokens. Other coral cards may have permanent effects like this. Some coral cards have action keyword, which means you can perform actions from these cards, and other coral cards may have endgame scoring conditions and so on. Note that you place these coral cards in a pattern which resembles a chessboard, and once you place a coral card, it can never be moved, and there is no limit to the size of your atoll, which means you can spread out in any direction, you can have any number of columns, any number of rows. The second main action is the animal purchase, which works in almost the exact same way as the coral purchase, with one exception. When you buy an animal card, not only you have to pay the price indicated in the top left corner, here we have 2 coins, but you also have to place it in between these corals so that this number of colonies are available. Here we have 2. Colonies are these symbols, which means when you place this card in one of these spots, you have to have at least 2 colonies on the surrounding coral cards. So this one can be, for example, placed here, because here we have first and second colony symbol. It cannot be placed here because there's only one. You cannot place it here because, again, there's only one colony here. You can place it here. There are 2 colonies. You can also place it here into the space with 4 colonies, but that would be a waste of colonies. You may place more valuable card into this space. Again, after you perform the action, slide all the cards away from the deck and reveal the new card from the deck and place it in the first position. Similar to coral cards, you place these animal cards so that they touch diagonally, resembling that chessboard pattern. And again, once you place an animal card in a space in your atoll, it cannot be moved. Finally, after you place an animal card into your atoll, place the abundance token on the lowest abundance level on that card. That indicates the victory points you score for that animal at the end of the game. And thematically, it represents the population of that animal in your atoll. Just to clarify, with one action, you can only buy 1 coral card or 1 animal card, including this large fish card. The next action is feeding, and with this action you increase the population, you increase the abundance level of an animal. Feeding is indicated with this effect, with this green arrow or white arrow in a green circle, the arrow pointing up. This effect means that you have to discard 1 plankton token in order to feed this animal. When you do, increase the abundance level of that animal and place this fatigue token on the animal card. This fatigue token prevents another feeding action on that animal, which means usually you can only perform feeding once per round on each animal. Again, with one action you can only feed one animal, so on your next turn you can, for example, feed another one, place a fatigue token there. Here you need to discard a plankton token and increase the abundance level of that animal. Some of these feeding effects are more complex. You can find the explanation of all these effects in the rulebook. I'm not going to explain all of them, but let me explain at least this one. This one indicates that in order to feed this animal, you have to reduce the abundance level of another animal, and here we also have the indicated type. So, for example, in order to increase the abundance level of this animal, we have to reduce the abundance level of the animal with this symbol. There are several variations of this effect on many other cards, which allows you to increase the abundance level of one animal and reduce the abundance level of another animal. Now, when you reach the highest abundance level of an animal, you gain a reward. You gain 1 fish scale if that animal is small fish or any other non-fish animal. You gain 2 fish scales if it's a medium fish, and you gain 3 fish scales if it's a large fish. 1 fish scale token can replace either 1 coin or 1 plankton. It's basically a wild token. You get this reward even in case the abundance level of that animal drops down, and then later in the game it comes back to the highest level again. You gain that reward repeatedly, even multiple times over the course of the game. Now, if you need to reduce the abundance level of an animal below the lowest value, that animal goes extinct. Discard the animal card to the corresponding discard pile, and then count the number of these colony symbols that animal occupied and gain that number of plankton tokens as a compensation. There are a few other animal abilities that affect feeding, and the first one is hunting. You can use hunting if you want to increase the abundance level of one animal, and in order to do that you have to reduce the abundance level of another animal, and that type of animal is present in another player's atoll. For example, here we have to reduce the abundance level of 1 crustacean, and let's say one of the players in the game has that type of animal card in their atoll. In that case, you can use your hunt token, flip it face down, which means you can only use it once per round, and increase the abundance level of your animal, and also place the fatigue token on that card. However, the hunted animal on the other player's atoll is not affected at all. The abundance level of that hunted animal is not reduced. There is no other negative effect. That type of animal simply needs to be present on other players' atoll. Another ability which may affect feeding is this symbiosis ability. When you place an animal with the symbiosis ability, which is this red heart symbol, in your atoll, you may immediately create a symbiotic pair with the indicated type of animal. To do that, place the symbiosis tokens on both animals. Here we have this Pomachentridae, which is also the class of this animal. And the advantage of this symbiosis is that when you feed one of these animals, here we only need 1 plankton token, you automatically feed the other animal in the symbiosis as well. You only place the fatigue token on the animal card which took that feeding action, so the other one can still take the feeding action in the same round. And there's only one limitation: if the feeding cost of that action would require the abundance level of another animal to be reduced, you cannot reduce the abundance level of the animal which is in the symbiosis. There's no limit to the number of symbiotic pairs in your atoll. If you create another symbiotic pair, simply use the symbiosis tokens of a different color. However, one animal card can only be part of one symbiotic pair. So even though this card can be in the symbiosis with this type of animal, you would not be allowed to place these symbiosis tokens like this, because that violates the rule which I have just described. If one of those animals in the symbiosis goes extinct and the card is removed, the symbiosis is also removed. There is one more ability which I want to talk about, and it's the ability with this shield symbol. It's called Shelter ability. That ability doesn't allow hunting players to use that animal for hunt, which means if other players want to use the hunt token and hunt that animal, they are not allowed to do so. It's as if this card would not even be in your tableau, in your atoll, when other players are using the hunt ability. Furthermore, if you use the feeding ability of one animal, let's say here we have an animal which needs another small fish to reduce their abundance level. If that animal has the shelter ability, you can increase the abundance level of the animal which is being fed, but thanks to that shelter ability you can ignore the negative effect, which means you don't need to reduce the abundance level of this animal. You can still feed this animal, but this one simply doesn't reduce its abundance level. Okay, the fourth type of the main actions are coral actions, and those are actions indicated by this keyword on coral cards. In order to perform that action, place one Fatic token on that coral card and then you can perform that action. You can only perform it if the card doesn't have any Fatic token yet, which means that usually you can perform these coral actions only once per round. Again, with one action you can only perform one action on one of the coral cards. The fifth main action is Coral Colony Growth. With this action you can place one of these tokens, the colony token, on any coral card on any side of that card which doesn't have a colony symbol yet. To do that, you have to pay 2 plankton tokens. So those were the 5 main actions, and now let's take a look at these support actions. Remember, you can only take each action once per round. When you do, place the Fatic token on that action, which indicates that you can no longer take that support action this round. The first of them is Water Purification. You have to pay 1 coin, and then you can remove 2 pollution tokens. Now, these pollution tokens are really bad because pollution tokens basically block the coral card, which means if there's a pollution token on the coral card, you may not use the action from that coral card. You may not activate the endgame scoring abilities on the card at the end of the game. You may not use passive abilities on the coral cards, and so on. With the Water Purification action, you can remove 2 of these pollution tokens and put them back to the common supply. However, during the recovery phase, you can only allow tourists to come to your atoll. I'll talk about that in a minute. Then the next action, the Seaweed Sale, allows you to sell your plankton tokens. For each 4 plankton tokens that you sell, you gain 1 coin as a reward for those 4 plankton tokens. You can repeat this exchange as many times as you want during that same support action. The third one, Algal Bloom, allows you to place 1 pollution token on any coral which doesn't have a pollution token yet, and for that you gain 2 plankton tokens. Again, you can do it as many times as you want during 1 support action. When you can no longer perform any of these main actions, or you don't want to perform any of these main actions, you have to pass. Then take the resources from the best space in this bonus area for the current round. The first player to pass will usually take the first bonus space, so 2 coins and 1 fish scale token. And when you pass, you can no longer perform actions during that round. The second player will take these resources, and then the third player in a 3-player game will take this resource. In a 4-player game, the 4th player would simply receive nothing. When all players pass, the action phase is over, and now move to the recovery phase. First of all players take income. They either invite tourists or scientists to their atoll. Remember, if you performed the water purification action during the round, you can only invite scientists. You have purified the water and your atoll, so you're not going to invite tourists, because tourists will again increase the pollution of your atoll, so you're not allowed to do that. And note that income increases as the game continues. Then, in the next step, you can remove Fatic tokens. Remove all the Fatic tokens from your help card from the support actions, and one Fatic token from each card in your atoll. Note that sometimes you can have more than one Fatic token on the card. In that case, you only remove one of those Fatic tokens. You can remove the next one at the end of the next round during the following recovery phase. Then in the third step, you gain plankton from all your colonies. Count the number of your colony symbols. So those are all these symbols on your coral cards. And using this table, gain the corresponding number of plankton tokens based on the number of your colony symbols. Then reset the hunt tokens, flip them back to the face-up side, and in the next step, discard the two rightmost coral cards and rightmost animal cards. Place these cards in the corresponding discard piles, and again slide the cards and replenish the display with the new cards from the draw decks. Don't do anything with these large fish cards. This display remains unchanged. Then move the first player token to the next player clockwise, move the round marker to the next round, and that's the end of the recovery phase, and you can move to the action phase of the next round. When you finish the recovery phase of the fourth round, in which you don't get any income or any bonuses, but you can still remove Fatic tokens, you can still gain the plankton and perform all other steps, the game ends and we can proceed to the final scoring. Sum up all the victory points based on the abundance level of all your animals. Here we have 1 point, 4 victory points, 3 victory points, and so on. Look at all the end game effects on coral cards and resolve these effects. However, you can only do that if the coral card doesn't have the pollution token. Some animal cards also have some endgame scoring conditions. Then score 1 victory point for each of your popularity tokens. These are basically victory point tokens. 1 victory point for each fish scale token you still have in your personal reserve. And you lose 1 victory point for each pollution token you still have on your atoll. Then sum up all the victory points, and the player with the most points is the winner. When you decide to play the advanced version with these event cards, shuffle the event deck at the start of the game, and then in the first, second and third round, after you finish the action phase, but before you move on to the recovery phase, flip the top card of the deck and resolve the event. There are two types of events. Immediate events, which are obviously resolved immediately, and there are persistent events which affect the whole game for the next round. You only reveal 3 cards in the round 1, 2 and 3, because in the fourth round, when you finish the action phase, any other event would have no effect on the game. So that's how you play Atoll. At the end of the rules you can also find rules for a solo game. There are 2 or 3 paragraphs. There's also an alternative or additional scoring called biodiversity, which scores the diversity of your animals and corals in your play area, in your atoll. If you have any other questions or any questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer your questions and comments. If you like the video, please like it. You can also subscribe to the channel. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell. This was the video tutorial for Atoll, published by Albi. My name is Branislav Berec, and hope to see you next time.